mandatory life without parole sentence given to a child. In essence, you were a child in the eyes of the law. And that began to change in the early 2000s with some of the statutes from the Supreme Court. But even today, states are not in any great hurry to change the sentences of children that have been given a life without parole sentence, a mandatory life without parole. It's happening, but very, very slow. Very slow.
Well, there's another component too, and I think some of the parole commissioners had, not public, but they were worried about paroling somebody like me that has been in prison so long, and worry about if I would be able to transition, which is a catch-22. I've proven them wrong on that. I function very well out here in the sense that, I had a steady job. I do the right things. I have no contact with law enforcement. Actually, some of the people that work in the plaza where I'm at are actually a former detective and knew my story, and we get along. So that would be the only contact has been a positive thing for me with law enforcement. So I think that I think the length that a juvenile would have in prison is extremely different than an adult. Not only longevity, but the experience of life about, they had a house, they had a job, they probably had their own family. The mechanisms in their mind are totally different from the experience of, a minor child that got into whatever they did, whether they did it or they didn't do it. Fundamentally, they're not on the same playing field as an adult. Right. And to keep them in prison that long and then to use that against them when it comes time to evaluate whether they're ready for society again is wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
Go
ahead, Dean. Yes, please.
May I say something about, you had asked earlier about if I had ever thought Dean was going to come home.
Right.
And as a child who was ignorant to the system at the time, until I started coming to visit Dean again and realizing and going to the status review hearings and watching the state forget papers, and they'd put, a status review for another 4 months, and then she'd forget to put some papers into a file or whatever it was. It was about a year and a half worth of just forgetting to do things, so they had to keep postponing, and I started to realize just how the system worked so badly against people that were trying to prove their innocence or trying to start their life over or have a chance at freedom. And there became a point where I wasn't sure if Dean was ever going to come home, because I saw how poorly they were treating not just his individual case, many other cases that I talked to families and people, and I'd been researching. And I really started to wonder if Dean was ever going to come home, because once I realized how, I don't want to say absolutely corrupt, but how the system doesn't necessarily work for the people.
Broken.
It is broken. And I started really doubting and wondering if it was a possibility, and it made me want to fight for him even more, because it was just so unfair, and he's such a good man, and I knew he didn't do it. And none of us, my family, my mother, she grew up a staunch Republican, and she is totally disgruntled with the system now because she can't believe just what they've done to him,
and that's one person.
Yes,
and not only that, you had the Innocence Project of Florida in your corner. There are men and women who are fighting to overturn their verdicts, and they're all by themselves. They have no one helping them. So even with that, it's fascinating to me that you felt so discouraged because you had someone so powerful and passionate behind you, which is
exactly the
Seth.
best warrior.
And yeah, that's right. You did have the very, very best. Well, we're coming down to almost the end of our podcast and our time with you both, which has been wonderful. And I wondered if you could speak to challenges you both face now that Dean is no longer incarcerated. What are the challenges? They're probably very different depending on, each of you. What would you say the challenges are?
I guess paying all these bills and fees and tattoo artist license fees and I paroled a Australian Shepherd when I got out from I didn't like him being in the little cell, and then I had to pay a fee every year to let him be my dog, and I don't understand that.
So was there a Puppies Behind Bars program at your prison?
No, there was a place by my work and she took me there. I guess, the lady couldn't take care of the dogs and I guess she had bought chickens from them in the past. And I seen his little face in that little cell and he gave me that look like, please get me out of here. And I told the lady, ma'am, I want to parole him. And she looked at me like I was crazy.
Oh, I understand now what you're saying. I misunderstood you because there are puppy programs in the prisons that are just fantastic, and they provide so much company because they live with you in your cell, and then you train them and give them up to an Iraqi veteran or someone who's blind. So that's what I thought you were saying. But yeah, the realities of life, as Danie was saying in the background, that's very true. So as we close the program, what parting thoughts do you wish to share with our listeners that maybe we haven't talked about?
Well, I would stress, appreciate your freedom. It is the most precious thing that you have, because if you are free, you can do anything that you choose to do as long as it doesn't hurt somebody else, right? Enjoy it and don't think that it can't be taken from you. So savor it, nourish it, build it.
Yeah, appreciate it, right? Yeah. And Danie, what would you say about any parting thoughts you have?
I would just like to say that all the families that are fighting for their loved ones, just keep fighting and supporting and loving and being there for the people that you love, because they need that so much, and it's such a blessing in the life. And I'm just so grateful Dean is home. I'm so grateful to the Innocence Project and to all of you that support them, and it's what makes stories like his possible, because he would not be home.
No, he wouldn't. No, that's very, very true. Yeah, that would be my thought too, is that to support the work of the Innocence Project of Florida, or any Innocence Project wherever people are listening.
Right.
As I said in the other podcast, that Seth is president of a worldwide network of projects all over the United States. There's one in every state almost, and then one in many, many countries around the world. And we have listeners that are all over the globe. And so I would say, please do support your project, your local Innocence.
A side note, ma'am?
Yes.
The volunteers, the interns, the donors, people that are involved in pushing and research and donating money, allow Seth and that wonderful team, and we need to mention Miss Melissa Montel, which was wonderful lady that, and Anthony Scott, David Mack, Miss Adina, I just go on and on.
All the staff, yeah, that's right.
But the outpouring of not only financial support, but time and energy and passion allows that team to do what they do for people like me.
That's right.
They can't do it without them.
Nope, they can't. That's very true. And that's a great parting thought. I appreciate both of you making time to join us on Pursuing Justice. This was a great honor to have you with us, and I hope that people will gain a very new perspective on a case of wrongful conviction firsthand, listening to you, Dean, and listening to you, Danie. So thank you so much. And once again, would love your comments and thoughts on the program. My email now is pursuing.justice5@gmail.com. Thank you both. Enjoy the holidays. And also, I know you have a wedding date next year, so congratulations on that. We forgot to include that. All right.
Yeah, we haven't picked the date.
Oh, not yet, but sometime in 2020, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
I really appreciate you inviting us and being interested in just being a really kind person and the things that you do for a lot of people.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Take care. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.